There's a newsletter that I put out about every 2 months. This last one was rather lengthy and complex because I needed a lot of information to back it up. It's basically where we're going as a society, outlawing everything that's organic and raw. And the only way you're going to be able to get it is to have farmers, or farms of your own. And it explains everything in there and everything else that is a problem. They just ruled there was a law that was passed in the Senate. It has to go through the House. May have on Friday, I'm not sure. But that law allowed them to make secret vaccines and gave the chief of that department the power, it's called BARDA, the power to call a national vaccine and force everybody. And if you don't take the vaccine, they can put you in quarantine. So that law, if it wasn't passed by Friday, it could go before the House any time this week, the next week. We need to stop it. Need to stop it if it's still possible. It's one of the Bush's and his pharmaceutical grade people who are out to destroy all of us. So they're pushing hard for it. Now, in the last 2 years, I've been researching a lot on the effects of vaccines, and I was looking at some children before they were vaccinated, and then after they had been vaccinated with penicillin. Penicillin looks like it's one of the worst diseases there is, the disease of having a penicillin injection, because that penicillin is a mold that grows on grains. It's familiar in the poultry industry, and it doesn't cause havoc in the poultry system because that mold is a part of them. But in the human system, which isn't built for that kind of, things like gangrene is normal for a human or even an animal. That kind of mold is indigenous for the human and is very helpful as long as you don't get too poisoned by chemicals. Chemicals all cause all diseases. They're not caused by bacteria or parasites or any microbes. It's always pollution. It's poison, industrial poisons that cause all diseases. When these children have been given penicillin, within about 9 months, shows up yellow all throughout the intestinal tract and the nervous system. All around where they get the injections, it's the first primal weakness, the whole shoulder and neck connection. And I always wondered I knew it, was a lot of injections. I thought it was mainly all vaccines, but they give penicillin usually at a very young age to children. I found it caused almost 90% of the Crohn's disease and IBS caused from penicillin. They say that they sterilize the molds, but molds you can't keep down. Molds come back from the dead just like the phoenix. They can become active within as early as 9 months and as late as 18 months. Gave me a break. So what it does is it eats and disassembles nerve tissue and digestive potential, destroys the bacteria in it. It also gets into the RNA and destroys the ability to naturally digest from then on. That's why so many children are so affected. That's why anybody from my generation up, when penicillin became a regular part of medical practice, we're all affected and weaker. I look at all of my uncles who were before the time of penicillin, and they're so much stronger up in the shoulders, everywhere in their buttocks and legs. That whole generation that my parents came from, so much stronger and healthier than we ever were. And when I was a child, I noticed that too. I was so weak, and I had more injections than anybody because a brother that hated me was always pushing me down on rusty things. My mother would run me to the doctor and get an injection of penicillin or tetanus. So I had a lot of it by the time I was 3 years old. And of course, that destroyed my ability to grow properly and heal properly because I couldn't digest properly with all those molds in the intestinal tract. And it wasn't until the last 2 years that I've been able to connect it with, the penicillin and it being that dangerous. And it's like they say, the best thing since penicillin, the best thing since penicillin. Sure, it stops people from dying, but it would cost. It would cost. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But usually in penicillin, there's not a lot of those other mixtures of poisons. Yeah. Well, the body can use them as chemotherapy. The body may take the mercury or the aluminum or formaldehyde or iron and iodine is what I see the most. Wherever I see those heavy spots where people have gotten injections of penicillin, I see that the body uses iodine or iron rusting to right where the mold is, to try to kill it. So it's a natural chemotherapy, but it is unnatural in the whole basic premise of the idea. If you inject the penicillin into the body, it's not natural. Then the body's natural response is, well, I have to do the best I can to kill it. And how do I kill it? I don't have agents in my body to naturally kill it. So I get the iodine and the iron, put it on there, and started rusting. And then all the aflatoxins that are produced from the penicillin and the veritoxins produced by the rusting metals have their contamination too. So it creates a degeneration from the moment that you get an injection. So keep your children away from any injection. Your grandchildren, everybody. Because that seems to be the way they seem to be weakening us in a major... I heard those theories, trying to subvert the smaller working class or the large working class, like the Egyptians. They only allowed the lackeys, the slaves, and China did it also. They were only allowed to have 10% of their diet of meat, so the brain didn't function clearly. Kept them hyped up with a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of grain starch, like the amaranth grain was the big one. In China, it was the rice. So it keeps people very imbalanced emotionally and mentally. And in our country, they're doing a bigger assault. They're coming in with vaccines and injections of all sorts to weaken the system. It's got to be planned because they know this. None of the astronauts get vaccinated. All the military people, all the kids that go in the military get heavy vaccines, but your astronauts don't get vaccinated. Why?
Yeah, Reagan asked Scripps, pediatric immunologist, what's going to happen if you keep giving immunizations at 2, 4, and 6 months?
Yeah.
And that's before 90.
Yeah.
And they basically, report this big, which I saw, because I worked there at the time, and they said, there won't be an immune system in 4 generations if you do this.
Yeah. That's what they're after. It looks like they're trying to destroy us. And I didn't believe those kind of things, that kind of theory until now I'm seeing it, And the whole theory that I that they are destroying us is very evident when you get my newsletter. It should have been published on Friday. Those who belong to the website, We Want to Live too. The TO is really a two. We Want to Live, and read that. Normally my newsletter is 4 pages long. This one's 11. And it's got all of these, these places where you can go online and check out, my sources for this stuff. And it's pretty scary. It's really scary. Our neighbors are flying. Pardon?
So what about other antibiotics besides penicillin? All the same family?
No, penicillin seems to be the worst. Of course, other antibiotics cause those problems, but not like that penicillin does. More damage from penicillin than I see from anything else as far as an antibiotic. But they all weaken the digestive tract, but I don't see any of them that weaken the nervous system like penicillin does. And the brain. They're trying to dumb us down. There's not anybody in any eyes that I've ever seen that didn't have that mold in their brain. It's almost always around the digestive tract. And the newer generation, the younger people, it's in mass. Coming out of your brain.
But it always feels like heavy molecules burn.
Yeah. Well, yeah, molds eat, anytime you put a mold on fruit or anything, it will start eating apart the substance. And if you have any kind of damage in your system, it will feed on it. To give you an idea how powerful molds are, before they could make this item right here, it's plastic or any of these are plastic, they had to create dioxins to destroy the molds in plastic. Every time they tried to use upholstery, any kind of material with a plastic, use plastic in cars, there was a mold that would spring up within about a year and 3 months. So that's 15 months. That would come up in the mold, and they couldn't control the molds. No matter how high they got the temperatures. They could cook that plastic at temperatures up to 2100 degrees, and it wouldn't destroy those molds. So they had to create anti-molds. Forget what they called, antifungals. So they created dioxins to do it. So dioxins are in your PVC, they're in any plastic there is. To keep the molds from eating the plastic itself. So penicillin in the human body, let's say the pharmaceutical houses sterilized it at 212 degrees. You'd have to get the temperature high enough to vaporize the mold to kill it. And that's about 2100 degrees. 100 times the entire temperature they take it. So obviously, to me, is that they meant it to cause damage. Serious damage in the human race. Pardon? I haven't followed that one yet. I'm just looking at, I'm talking about the injection only. I can't tell you about the oral yet. That'll do in 3 or 4 more years. That one's a harder one to follow because you're eating and it's mixing with foods and everything, but an injection is easy to follow the tracks in the irises.
But you're not saying that molds are bad in themselves. got wheat and cheese in it.
Well, that's a mold that grows in animal tissue. The milk is animal tissue. So that's natural for us.
So animals okay?
Yeah. Animal molds are fine. But grain molds belong in the fowl industry, you know. Those molds are for the birds. Literally. Like grains are for the birds and not for us. All grains have molds. All food has molds. Even meat molds. There's gangrene mold, stuff like that. Well, that's a fruit mold, and we can handle a little bit of that, and it won't survive very long in our body. But when you're talking about a sterilized mold, it doesn't have its normal consciousness, so it has a tendency to cause a lot of byproducts and toxins in the human body that causes more damage. So. Well, it's because it's on building materials, and building materials are either earth, or either earth molds or tree molds, stuff like that, and that can be a little bit difficult for humans.
What about spores?
Pardon?
Spores? Same family?
The what?
Spores? S-P-O-R-E-S.
Oh, spores. Well, the spores is just a mushroom of a mold, mycelium. The mycelium is the liquid that goes around and eats everything apart, and then when it gives off its offspring, it becomes spores, which are tiny mushrooms. And then, the mushrooms are in the top of the mushroom, whether it's infinitesimally small, and you can only see it under a microscope, or your regular mushrooms. The spores are in that cap. When it dries, then the spores can be distributed anywhere. The winds will take them, or another animal will pick it up and carry it. And if the spores find, usually what they are is they'll find dead roots underground, and then then it will become liquid and become a milky substance, and the mycelium works on eating up those dead roots. And then, of course, when it's finished, it will spore again, which means create the mushrooms, and they'll disperse. So it happens no matter what it is. It's the fibrous matter that molds. It keeps everything together. And once that mold has broken all the fibers apart, it is completely a liquid substance, and then the earth can eat it, re-eat it, and become fertilizer and grow again. But when they've been tampered with, when they've been sterilized or altered in some genetic way, then they become a poison to us, because they produce barotoxins and aflatoxins if it's grain, that causes a lot of problems. Now, they know that aflatoxins, which are produced by grains, molds from grains, those aflatoxins are carcinogenic. So, again, all of this stuff is very toxic. But, of course, industry isn't going to say a thing about it, and the medical profession isn't going to say a thing about it because it condemns themselves. And then we could sue them, and then every jury in America would find them guilty, because the jury is usually a bunch of normal people. But they're trying to get rid of the jury system, slowly and slowly. They take it. Oh, you can have a 12-person jury. Get into a courtroom and try to get 12 members of a jury. Almost 80% of the time, 86% of the time is the last record. That 86% time, you can only get 6 in your jury, 6 people in your jury. So you're whittling it down little by little. So you have no recourse. The only way you're going to be able to, provide for yourself is to be invested in farms. So, if you don't have a farm, you better get some land and start growing it.
Yeah, but they'll figure out a way to regulate that. They do now.
I know, but at least you have a chance. You'll be one of the latter ones to go. They can't police everybody in every area.
Not about the United States, though.
Yeah, but it's no different. The United States has ties with all the other countries, and they're not going to turn it around. You found that out in Thailand.
Yeah, I found that out in Thailand. I mean, when I was over there the last time, in June, I was in Pattaya, and it's about probably 70 miles from Pattaya, which is a major naval base, and they were spraying chemtrails for the first time in Thailand. The U.S. military was there doing exercises with the Thai government, Thai military, and they were spraying chemtrails. It means putting their military waste into our skies so it pollutes everything. Don't have a clue yet. I'm still looking. Well, it's going to be like it's going to be a little bit more complex than my normal workshops that I do all over the country. I've done everywhere, and I do them repeatedly, and people come back repeatedly because there's 5 hours of information, 5.5 hours of information, even up to 7 hours if I just mouth off too much. And people come back because there's so much to get and there's so much to miss that they keep coming back to see them. But this one I'm going to use charts in it when I talk about the bloodstream, the lymphatic system, and the autonomic nervous system. And I explain how those work, how the body works. We'll talk about I'm going to take everybody through exactly how the body works, how the digestive tract works, how food works within that, just so that everybody, when they walk out of there, have a clean picture of what they are doing to them systems, if they're helping it or hurting it, and how they're doing it, and how they're overtaxing some systems, and how they can alleviate that by lessening the complexity on a particular part of the body. So when you walk out of there, you should walk out of there with a pretty clean understanding of how to make everything work well for you in your life. Make use of anything that's in my books, and really say, I'm eating this, but why am I eating that? Because I can't spend, 10 pages on why you have to eat this and how it affects your body. And so this will help everybody have a comprehensive overall view of really how the body works and how this diet works for you. Well, I'm going to have 5 cameras. A DVD, probably it'll be, I don't trust anybody to do the first edit. So I'll have to do that myself. And it'll be like editing 3 motion pictures. Because I have 5 cameras going, and you're talking about 6.5, 7 hours of tape. Well, getting the hard drive camcorders, hard drive, so there's no tape, there's no CD, you just download it from the hard drive, high definition hard drive into your computer. So I will have that many hours times 5 to have to edit. And so it's probably take me off and on probably to September, and then I'm going to give it to somebody to clean up and do a little bit better when I have all the basic material in. And then should be ready sometime around October, November for sale. But, it's going to be expensive because you're talking about just about 5 to 7 hours of material. So probably be on 3 DVDs. So right now, the person who's working on it with me, which is the man who published my books, said that probably for us to make, bare minimum profit, it would have to be sold for about $275 for the whole thing. But then you have all that information. Other people will go to my workshops every 6 months in these places like Chicago and St. Louis, where I go every 6 months. The same people, some of the same people will show up every one of those workshops because they get so much out of it. And they, it's a lot of material in one day to be able to digest. And when you're doing it, thinking about it, each time you go, you get so much more, and it's continuous. I mean, it's like trying to digest 38 years of material that I know in a day. You can't do it, so you repeat. So if you have the DVDs, you'll be able to play them as often as you like to grasp everything, to have the the insight into it that's necessary to really be able to know exactly what you're doing or close to understanding exactly what's happening. Okay? So we're going to start with Q&A.
Well, so relative to that, I know how are we going to organize? I mean, who in the world, besides James for food and this guy in Florida, I mean, there's got to be some centers of knowledge someplace in leadership for us to get our act together.
Well, why don't you start it?
Well, I'm the next Eli Lilly employee. Yeah, I helped create some of this disaster.
I've got one of my top people in Aspen worked for Merck. She sold the drugs for I don't know how many, 11 or 12 years, and now she's understands what it is, totally against them. She just wrote a little book on raw foods, which goes in and almost the whole her book is not experiential. It's from the proving everything, understanding it from a scientific viewpoint, which to me is good if you're heady into it and it gives you the basics. But she doesn't really give a lot of experience. She hasn't had a lot of experience. She's only been doing it 4 years. But it's changed her whole life. It's changed her daughter's life. It's changed everything. Good question. Do you remember the name of it, Lauren?
Raw to Radiance.
Oh, Raw to Radiance. Raw to Radiance. Raw to Radiance. Radiance?
I think it's Radiance.
Yeah.
And what's
Her name is Kimberly Cohen.
C-O-I-T-E?
Yes. Now she self-published it, so I don't know if it's available in stores, but you might be able to find it online somewhere. I know she has I think her website is rawtoradiance.com, so you could probably, get it there.
What was the other book you said? Sweet something on the...
Oh no, that's a movie. That's a DVD.
Okay.
Sweet Remedy. It's about aspartame. And she was diagnosed and had severe symptoms of MS, multiple sclerosis. And she found out, going through all this therapy and everything for MS, going through all this garbage, medical garbage, and she found out it was aspartame. Cut out aspartame and all of her symptoms disappeared. And she found out that there are women all over the United States that are diagnosed. Somebody's big one here popped up. She went all over the United States and found out that there were thousands of women who'd been diagnosed with MS and treated for MS, and all they had was aspartame poisoning. So it's a movie about that. And it's a little too heady and a little too scientific for me. I would have preferred that, she really got into the nitty-gritty and those and the sufferers and what they were going through. She just interviewed a few of them, but then it was, I went on aspartame. They didn't go into the details of how these people suffer. And MS is a very serious disease. To be misdiagnosed when it's aspartame poisoning, and the FDA knew about it. FDA knows about it now, and they still allow it to be marketed. So, this movie is very good. It's about this woman around interviewing everything, but you don't really see how she suffered. It doesn't talk about that. It's just, it's a heady thing, but it also lets you know that your government, the United States government, is not your government. It's owned by the chemical industries, and they're going to do whatever protects their butts and their profits. Okay, so let's start off with questions. Yes?
I just want to say to everybody who lives here, I got a slick brochure in the mail 2 weeks ago. I'm a registered nurse in the state of California, from the medical board in California.
Uh-huh.
It said, all you doctors and nurses who are licensed here in Southern Cal, get to be part of our Medical Reserve Corps and help us when the pandemic is called, and you will show up or we will come and help you to your station. And nobody that I know in 30 years of practice has gotten something like this in the mail.
Yeah.
There is a plan, and they are letting us know we're already part of the Medical Reserve Corps, and we will be drafted when they call the pandemic.
Yep, and you will vaccinate everybody.
Or send them to a detention center.
Yep.
And they've said that, you will go door to door with a military person to help you in a white van.
Yes.
They'll say, stick out your arm or get in our van.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what it is. Yeah.
So,
Well, you have to understand, Prescott Bush, grandfather Bush, financed Hitler.
yeah.
Grandfather Bush financed Hitler. All he has to do is declare martial law, and there will be no election.
And he'll stay.
And he will stay as long as he wants to be a dictator.
His whole group will stay.
And nobody's got balls. Nobody in the Senate or House got any balls. No. Yeah. Yep. Okay, let's go through questions. Do you have a question?
Relative to your penicillin, one of the reactions I get is skin rashes all over. Like this last time, it was all over my torso.
Uh-huh.
That's part of the detox, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
So relative to that is, God, it drives you nuts,
Yeah.
itching, and
Yeah.
or
Just
dry.
remember, a lot of poisons, when they leave the body, leave through the skin. And they cause drying out and hardening in the skin because it destroys the skin tissue and subcutaneous tissue. So it causes hardened areas that, when they dry out, become very itchy. And your body wants to scratch them off.
Yeah. Is that good?
It's okay, but you need to use coconut cream on it constantly. If you've got hives, put coconut cream and take slices of very cold refrigerated tomato slices or cucumber slices, and you just keep cooling those areas, because when you've got an active mold coming through that skin, it's going to burn the tissue. That's what the hive is. and it's going to cause scabs and swelling eventually. And that's that chemical coming through the skin or the mold coming through the skin. Live mold.
Well, relative to that, you said dry skin. That's the other thing with the Santa Anas here and everything. What's a dry skin remedy if you can't use a commercial lotion?
Well, you have to use coconut cream. Even though it's slightly sticky, you're going to have to use coconut cream.
And it smells like hell. After it molds, it gets moldy too.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So, I mean, do you have a combination like for lime juice or something that?
Well, no, because then it dries it out. So you really can't put anything with it. Only thing you could do is maybe mix a little ginger in it. But a lot of people can't stand the smell of ginger with molding coconut cream. I never met I used to put it in, for masseuse, to get massage. And every time I take it to somebody who's on a diet to massage me, and they smell that stuff, they get really offended. It's like, ooh, they get out of there, they're washing their hands to get it off. So when I take coconut cream, even if it's soured, it's not so bad. When you try to camouflage it, it makes it worse for some reason. So just deal with the stinky coconut cream.
I'm laughing because I use ginger on everything.
Yeah, we use ginger on everything, so it's great stuff. I love ginger.
Would you be surprised some people who are, normal people out there can't stand the combination? Me, I like it, but they don't. Become very offended.
Skincare cream is the best thing I've ever had. Ever even seen anywhere. They've never used one. What kind? What is it? Incredible facial skincare recipe.
In my book,
It's
yeah.
with butter, cream, coconut cream, ginger,
And honey.
It's excellent. The reverse aging is incredible.
Yeah, but it's not keeps licking.
It wants some of that.
It does.
Absolutely, yeah. Do you have a question? No? Okay. I'm going to bounce back and forth. I'm going to do it differently this time. You have a question, Steve?
Well, I have a 6.5-month-old baby. I was just wondering if you had any guidelines for kids
Well,
when they get weaned.
they should always I think they should always supplement with cow's milk. Not just have mother's milk from the day they're born. Because the mother has never been raw her whole life, unless she's been raw her whole life. And if she still isn't raw right now, then that baby's getting a lot of toxins. So I always suggest that mothers put their babies on milk that comes from an animal that's always been raw. A lot of mothers don't like to hear that because they like to suckle. They like that experience. And I say, well, if you want to compromise, half your milk, half the cow's milk, because it's always going to be better. And you have to get your ego out of it. But, how many mothers heed that advice until the child's, 4, 5, 2 years old, when they start seeing that the child has developed problems because they did breastfeed, and a lot of those poisons go from the mother to the baby, even in the milk. So there's lots of mothers who, find out only after the fact, even though I've said what I've said. But when you've got a little baby there, and the rationale goes out the door.
So anything after that, after one, or after they get weaned?
Well,
Like I know you talked about like raw hamburger for that one.
yeah, but mostly babies should be mainly on milk till they're 5. Like the one kid there was a child whose mother was on the diet 100% for 3 months, his last 3 months of gestation, and when he was born, he drank, just the milk, drank the mother's milk, didn't do too well with it, so she went right into the cow's milk for him, and then after 6 months, put half buffalo liver and half milk, a little bit of honey in it, and he still drinks that at 5 years old. He loves that, and he just started school 5 years old in the 4th grade. kid learns on his own. He knows 187 countries. He knows if it's a monarch or a patriarch or a democracy or whatever it is. He knows all of that, and he can tell you what country's next to which country. And nobody taught him this stuff. He'll just pick up a book and start automatically. He's never had a vaccine, never had any medication. He's only had raw foods his whole life. Yeah, well, caught his grandparents get a cookie, chocolate chip cookie ones, and he was a little distraught that evening. The child was from that. But mainly the child hasn't had anything, abusive. So the child is absolutely a genius. Knows all the presidents, all the vice presidents, where they came from. Oh yeah, he eats meat, doesn't he? Well, he eats the buffalo liver. Meat. Yeah, he'll eat meat. He eats meat. He eats. That's about all he eats: dairy and milk and honey. Eggs. He'll eat eggs and a milkshake.
You said that they don't eat juice; they're raw.
You shouldn't have to.
You shouldn't have to.
Well, I mean, you're talking about a child that's getting milk from a mother who isn't completely raw. Then, of course, probably a tablespoon once a week wouldn't harm. Probably would help.
Just more for adults to have that.
Right. Usually at 16 and 16 years old, that age is when it's better. They start drinking vegetable juice. Unless you've got a highly acidic, toxic child. It would be different. Okay, do you have a question?
Yes. When I juice, I often get diarrhea. I have a hard time getting my bowels regulated. I see diarrhea right now.
From the juice?
After I have the juice.
Yeah. What kind of mixture are you having?
Celery, parsley, cilantro, and some cabbage, one other green carrot.
Making an awfully big mix there. Especially cilantro may cause heavy detoxification of metals. What you have to do is cut it down to one juice, like just do celery, see what happens for, about 4 or 5 days of celery, and then see which one is mainly the one doing it. If the celery doesn't do it, and you don't want to have a concentration of any of those juices. Just do celery and see what that does to you. If that's an okay juice for you, then you add the cilantro and see how that does for 3 or 4 days, but only like 10% of the juice, 90%. And then the next time you try parsley, then the next time carrot with the celery and see what juice it is causing. Oh, yeah. Cabbage has a lot of vitamin K and vitamin U, which helps coagulation of not only blood, of other substances. If that is the occurrence that cabbages helps it, you probably has a little bit of Crohn's disease, which means you have lesions in your intestines and it's causing leaky gut. And the cabbage will seal it, like it does ulcers, it will seal it. All right, do you have a question?
I didn't, but no, I have a question.
Okay.
Cabbage, if it's sauerkraut, would that be?
No, it's fermented, so it has an entirely different property. When you ferment cabbage, the vitamin K and vitamin U is thinned, and it doesn't have the same reaction. And there's a lot of people that say fermented foods are very good. Yes, they're very good for people who are eating cooked foods, because it's a natural breaking down of fermentation that they don't do naturally because they're eating cooked foods. So it's helpful. In our system, you can use it as a medicine in very small amounts, but don't have a lot of it. A couple tablespoons of some, coleslaw or, or sauerkraut, whatever it is, that's fermented. It's fine. But I've seen people, I've followed about 4 people who were eating a lot of the fermented vegetables on this diet, and their red blood count went way down. They got a lot more energy, but it was more of a erratic energy, and they weren't as clear thinking. So there's, some side effects to that. So be careful if you're doing that.
If you're having good bacteria in your intestines, that helps with that.
Repeat that?
If you have good bacteria in your intestines, that fermentation happens naturally.
Yes. Your body will ferment the foods that you're naturally supposed to eat, which is meats, and dairy products, animal foods. There's a fermentation of those foods, which is very important. We're not a vegetable eater, so that's a foreign substance in our system, foreign fermentation. However, I found that any food that you've had cooked in your lifetime, cooked vegetables, the natural bacteria has been destroyed in that food. So when you eat it and it becomes a part of your body, there's no natural bacteria reaction to decompose that substance and remove it from your body. So like I said, you use a fermented food like sauerkraut, or ferment any vegetable to reintroduce those bacteria into the body so they can find their way to their natural substances that were cooked and start eating them up and getting rid of it. Is that clear? Anybody didn't understand that? Okay, good. Sometimes I wonder. Okay, do you have... Pardon? Yeah. At a time. In a day, that's good. Yeah, that's... Yeah. Exactly. Whatever you've had a lot of, whether it's cereals or, you could ferment the grains like Rejuvelat, but you only have a small amount. I've done the trip of having a lot of something to detox fast, and I've always suffered, so why do it? 2 tablespoons, 3 tablespoons max a day, so you can have these detoxifications without having ill reactions. I'd put myself, having, like I used to drink a lot of pasteurized milk and my cereals, and I would put, 4 tablespoons of sugar in my cereal, and if it was Sugar Crisp, I'd still put 4 tablespoons of sugar. So it was already really sweet. So I wanted to detox all of that, so I fermented some milk with some maca flour in it, which is a root which mimics cereals. So I fermented that together. When I uncorked it, the alcohol was so powerful in it that it actually burned my nostrils. My nostrils were sore for a few days, and I drank 3 cups of it like an idiot, in one day. And let me tell you, I had a reaction for about 3 weeks. I had hives that were as big as my hand. And, I'd flown to Hanoi, so I was stuck in a hotel room for 3 days dealing with all these hives, and I wouldn't scratch them because they were so inflamed. I just kept putting the refrigerated, tomato and cucumber on, and coconut cream, It's easy to get coconut cream over there everywhere because it's a regular part of their diet. So, I was in Hanoi in a hotel room for 3 days, but I suffered with those for almost 6 weeks. all smaller reactions of them. So it's better to be a little bit more conservative in your detoxifications, I think, unless you like to suffer.
You're very excited about getting kefir. The kefir is the main.
Yeah, but it's more natural. It's an animal product again. Animal products that are fermented are fine for us. We're talking about grains that are not meant for us. We're talking about vegetables that are not meant for us. Those will give the really traumatic reactions, aggressive reactions. Do you have a question? Okay.
You don't say fruit.
I only. Oh, this about what?
Well, no, you were saying are natural for what
Vegetables.
Are fruit.
Fruits are not really that natural for us either. But if you've eaten a lot of, marmalades and jams, then that's something you should use to help detoxify. But you don't have to ferment fruit. It already ferments in our digestive tract. It ferments very quickly. So you don't have to worry about pre-fermenting that. Do you have a question?
Okay, I have a question about curds and whey.
Watch your language.
Okay, Ron makes these curds and whey, and I love them. I've been eating it with my meal. The curds, which is like cottage cheese, and the whey, which is liquid. And it's fabulous. It goes down, it feels good, I feel wonderful. Is that okay to eat with my meat, or if I make fish or meat and chicken or whatever?
Well, the curds are pretty good with meat, but your whey is...
Well, you told me to drink whey because my leg,
yes,
I'm
but
getting pains in my legs in the middle of the night.
It's so acidic. The whey has a tendency to be overly acidic. So I usually recommend that people put that with the vegetable juice.
Yeah, I do that too.
Okay. It's just, unless you're over out, if you're diabetic and you want whey with your meat meals, that's fine. Because diabetics have a tendency to be over alkalinized.
What can I drink with my meal? I need to drink something to get the food down.
A little milk.
Just milk? Any
Fermented
kind of
milk is better. Kefir yogurt is always better.
Kefir or
yogurt.
Any kind of healthy milk. But don't drink whey with my meal, but any kind of milk.
Yeah.
I mean the raw milk.
Whole milk, yeah.
Yeah. All right, terrific.
Okay.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Do you have a question? Not yet? Okay. Do you have a question? Karen? Vicky.
So I have my certain diet that I have to follow. And then now I'm with my kids now that I'm more and more. I give everything. And they've had vaccines and things. So I don't have time enough in the day right now in how I'm feeling to make all this food for them. You know what I mean? And try to get everything organized. So there was one thing, I'm giving raw milk and raw butter. I'm trying to do stuff like that. But if there's one thing I really wanted to do that's help them right away, over that. They want to do raw eggs. My son
Milkshakes.
wants to do the milkshakes. And that would help. And will that help detox like from the vaccine and things like that? You know what I mean? It's like, what's the big bonus thing I can do from right now until I can get myself well enough?
You need to stabilize them first. Are they all thin?
One is thin and
the other one very fat?
He's heavier and soft.
Yeah, but he's not fat.
No.
I would just say stabilize them. Feed them lots of dairy until they get fat. And then the body will start taking care of that stuff.
They haven't had all.
So all the important thing is to stabilize anybody before you want to get detoxified. You start detoxifying molds from injections or heavy metals from injections, you're going to have problems. You're going to have RNA damage. Pardon?
Is that what we're doing with you? Or I just jumped in and started?
No. Adults usually don't go into detoxifications right away unless they have a terribly toxic liver and spleen or gallbladder and pancreas. Those four glands. organs and glands.
Yeah. It's supposed to be every day.
Well,
Maybe slow down to diarrhea.
well, you just eat lots and lots of cheese to absorb the poison. You know. Pardon?
I can grow cheese. When I'm starting cheese eggs.
Yeah. The only way you will know what kind of poison you're poisoned with is to analyze the vomit. Like, I've told other people in the other sessions that had a cancer patient and she was vomiting so much I wanted to know why she was heaving so. She was vomiting like, 8 to 10 times a day. And this was going on for 2.5 months. And I had convinced her to gain 30 pounds, and I wanted to go up to 45. Anybody with cancer, I like them to go as high as possible, because if they go through this vomiting spell, getting rid of the chemical that's caused their cancer, sometimes it can be so debilitating, they'll lose too much weight, and then they'll never recover. So she didn't gain quite as much as I wanted her to gain, and she was vomiting pretty badly, having diarrhea also. And I sent just 4 ounces of vomit. It came out of one vomit, all of it. It was only 4 ounces. I sent it to the lab, and the chief of the lab called me and said, somebody's poisoning your patient. And I said, what do you mean? He said, she has 3,000 times the lethal dose of thallium in that 4 ounces of vomit. 3,000 times the amount that could kill a human was in that 4 ounces of vomit. Pardon? She had cancer of the breast, yeah. No, she didn't do any of that. She was a jewelry maker. She never wore a mask, never wore gloves, and she burned that metal and worked it right in her face and breathed in all that metal, thallium, the heavy metal, went to her breath. Her lymph glands. It went through the lungs and out into the lymph glands. And started deteriorating the tissue. That's how bad she was poisoned. That was just from one vomit, and she vomited for 2.5 months. That was from one vomit. So you can imagine the concentration of metals. And the body obviously selected out thallium, and maybe another time it was, some other alloy that made up, could have been mercury, could have been silver, all these other elements that are toxic in concentrated amounts. Pardon? No, she died. She just didn't. Well, just at the end, she stopped all tumors. It stopped. She lost her breast completely. It just dissolved and deteriorated. But all the tumors stopped. And she couldn't eat. She was just down to that limit. That's why I like a certain weight before you go into it. She just didn't make it. Okay, that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, the word in the morning, so that's right. When I called you, I told you that I'm vomiting. So
Yeah.
I tried to get myself to eat more. Still at night, when I eat, I get like 4 bites down.
I don't mind. You've got a little bit of weight on you for
I
protection.
don't have to worry about my problem.
Yeah, unless you drop a lot of weight, that's a problem. But you keep trying to eat. And just remember, if you vomit like that, usually 20 minutes after you vomit, you'll be able to keep the food down, because the poisons are dumping, and once they dump, you have about a 35 to 40 minute break. So once you vomit, you've got, about 20 minutes later, you'll be able to eat for about 10 minutes and keep that food down. And then, another hour later, you might start vomiting again. But you can keep food down if you just know how to time it and how the body's working. Okay?
Vomiting. I was a month ago. I got sick like this, and I was vomiting for 12 hours. At one point, there's nothing left. But it'd be good to eat eggs, so there's something to absorb.
Exactly. That's what you want to do.
The eggs will give you the energy while it's in your body for a short amount of time,
Right.
and then it comes out again.
Yeah. Some of it will be absorbed and utilized, and then the body can continually dump But if you don't have any food in there, and you're becoming a little bit thin on fluids, the body's not going to dehydrate when you're on a raw diet. You won't allow it. You'll just have a dry stomach and have dry heaves. So you put eggs in, you put foods in, some cheese, lots of cheese absorbs those poisons. So then you've got something to bring it up with, to eliminate it. And then in between that, you eat to digest. So you just have to work with the body that way until you're through it. But let me tell you, the people who vomit and have diarrhea, they get well the fastest. Can you imagine the amount of white blood cells and fat tissue that it would take to get rid of 3,000 times the lethal dose of thallium? And she did it in one vomit? I mean, it would take probably a couple of maybe 5 or 6 million white blood cells to get rid of that much, just 3,000 times the lethal dose of thallium. Well, she did up until the last 2 weeks. And then she got so sore from vomiting, But that's what I mean. You've got to get through that last stage. You got to have that extra weight. In that last 2 weeks, that was it. All it took to kill her. She was probably 5'5", and she was probably 140 pounds. But when they have cancer, I want them to have, 15 more pounds than that. You don't get cancer unless you've got some pretty serious chemical poisoning. And when that starts dumping, you better have the weight. Because you're not going to be able to eat very much. You're not going to be able to keep down very much until it's over, done with. So, you get cancer, kick yourself up an extra 15 pounds. Or you do what my lovely woman does right here. Gets the weight all ahead of time, and you're fat and happy all the time because you've got enough fat to deal with any poisons that release anywhere in the body. I mean, when I was first, I gained that much weight too, and I kept it for 2.5 years. And I kept going up and down with it, And, now I have to drink half a gallon of milk a day to, and all my meat and everything, and all that butter to gain a lot of weight, because I'm relatively so clean. But I don't like to take any chances. I know there's still a lot of poison from chemotherapy, and I can see all of that penicillin mold still in my brain. And I've got lots of toxicity in my prostate gland. So I'm not taking any chances. I want a lot of that extra fat on my body. Of course, I don't look it, but I'm 24% body fat now. And most athletes, if they look at this, as tight as everything is, they say, oh, maybe you're 13% body fat. No, I'm 24% body fat now. Because this, pardon? Oh, you want to see that? That's 24% body fat. Yeah. Because the fat's dispersed everywhere, evenly.
Mine's 34%.
Is there a lag time between your body and how it's supposed to dry?
It's about a month.
That quick.
Yeah, it's that quick. In 3 months, you can see a lot of changes. I can see a lot of changes. I like people who go on years and they see a dramatic change.
That's about working out, because everything's have to work out.
I don't work out. This is my workout. Cary Grant's workout. Times their normal size. Take a little grain of popcorn. What happens when you cook it? It's that big, doesn't it? That's what happens to a fat molecule. 10 to 50 times its normal size. I've been eating raw fat since 1972. Only raw fats. No cooked fats in my body. So after this many years, all of my fat molecules are very small. So I 24% body fat, don't look it, compared to your average person who is full of cooked swollen fat. And of course, if you're trying to, your body's detoxifying, where do you think a lot of that cooked fat's going to go? To the intestines, because most of it has to go out the bowels if you're not vomiting.
You mean it's inside the intestines or in between the organs? What do you mean? Because
You have fat molecules everywhere in your body,
yeah. But
okay?
you guys do-
Where they dispose of mainly is in the digestive tract. So that's where they will be carried to the digestive tract. So you have the fats that you're eating and the old fats that you're trying to get rid of will get dumped into the intestinal tract. So you're always going to have a big waste for, probably was 4 years ago when I stopped having a huge waste. I used to have two, 3 inner tubes there. Thighs were huge, yeah. Calves, yeah. But it was even, but still, I'd been on raw foods a long time up to that point. But when I first started eating meats in 1976, I swelled up huge. Huge. I was round-faced, puffy, all over. I was just gorged.
Are you drinking water?
Well, I've had 3 ounces in the past week of water. I'm drinking a half a gallon of milk a day. I don't need water. Pardon? Well, I'm gaining weight. I'm working at it. Yeah.
Yeah, the rest of us drink that milk when we get back.
Well, I drank the milkshakes, and that's how I
So
lost
did
30
I.
pounds.
Before.
Now I don't get fat that way. I have to.
But are you drinking? You're not drinking milkshakes. Is there a difference between drinking the milk?
If you're having milkshakes, you'll put on more weight.
Well, I gained like 20 and 30 pounds right away.
Congratulations. But you say you feel great.
I feel
so-
fabulous.
Yeah. Okay.
For everybody. Does anybody here experience symptoms of burning if they're not eating fat? Like, do they find that if
Somebody's-
you're not eating it, like for instance, if you're not eating fat, like they feel you're burning something in your body or some kind of sickness that says, oh, I need to eat fat now. To deal with what's happening.
I feel that in my joints.
You do a lot of yoga, so yeah.
Shows up to see it and stretching. I do a little fatter on it. But my joints feel better. And I feel actually more flexible.
Yeah.
That's my response.
Fat's very protective.
Okay, I just want to ask you, milkshakes versus milk? You told me, I'm just going less and less on the milk because I'm not going to gain any more weight. 30 pounds is what I gained.
Yeah.
I'm just drinking different kinds of milk, yogurt milk and the kefir
That's fine.
and the whey and the curds and sour, whatever it is, all the milk. Is that okay instead of?
That's fine. If you want to eat the eggs alone burn fat.
No, I'm not talking about eggs alone. I'm talking about milkshakes.
Oh yeah.
your
So what I'm
milkshake
saying
also.
is, if you have the milkshakes, you're going to gain weight.
That's what you told me to stay on.
Yeah. But if you don't want to gain any more weight, and you still want to eat the milkshakes, eat some eggs by themselves sometime during the day to cut the fats. Raw eggs alone will burn fat. Eggs with other foods will cause you to gain weight.
So the smoothie with eggs, that's eggs with other foods.
Yeah.
Not a good thing? Eggs
No, it's
alone are
good.
better.
It's good. If you don't want the weight, then, you eat the eggs alone. Eat the dairy and the eggs separately.
But she feels better on smoothies. Not smoothies.
I
Milkshake.
love milkshakes,
No.
but I don't like getting fat.
Well, what you do is you have, 3 or 4 times where you're eating nothing but eggs in between meals.
Just
You
plain
burn
eggs,
some fat.
nothing else.
Yeah.
I can't stand them.
I love
I
them.
can't do that.
You can.
Yeah, come on.
You can. You're a tough gal. Okay. You have a question, Lori?
What's it, like, let's say it's like for symptoms where you're getting certain kinds of bladder burning or burning symptoms like that, what is the best thing to do for that? Knowing that for symptoms.
Well, that's usually molds that are dumping into the bladder, or you're getting some kind of a metal like mercury. It's dumping into the bladder, and your blood is too acidic. You're not drinking your vegetable juice enough. The vegetable juice, you make sure you have at least 3 times a day if you're having that sensation. Do you have a question, Barbara?
I just want to ask that you know what other people in the government side will you think about mostly like you just that the cooked eggs are 20 times larger in the body than yours.
10 to 50.
10 to
50. 50.
So how come a lot of people who do eat a lot of cooked eggs are skinny?
They don't hold fat. They don't digest them properly. They pass through their bodies.
It's like all my head, I just want to know because you just give me an example of John Travolta.
Yeah.
And I mean, here's one example, but there's hundreds of people who eat the same diet and they are skinny or split.
Yeah.
You know, women who as well who do. And I just wonder why don't they?
They don't metabolize their fats.
That is because they read into it.
Yeah. Well, they metabolize their fats, but they don't absorb and digest them properly. It's for other things,
Right.
for protecting the body. So they may burn it as fuel, but they don't do well in protecting their tissues. See, there are 3 varieties of cholesterol. There's a variety that protects the body, that coats everything, the fat that protects. There's the fat that burns, and the fats that clean the system. Body makes solvents with them, soaps, clean the body. So they may have the one that metabolizes the fat, but they don't make the soaps well, and they don't make the protection well. And you can tell that if they have very dry skin, like a lot of your athletes. They'll burn the fats, but they don't metabolize the cholesterols that help lubricate and protect their skin and the rest of their internal tissue cells. Lubrication, fuel, and lubrication is protection as well. Fuel and cleansers. Yeah. Those are soaps, like Virus. Just like we make all soaps are made from petroleum. We used to, 50, 60 years ago, 80% to 90% of all soaps were made with coconut fat. Now they're using petroleum, chemicals derived from petroleum, gasoline, kerosene to clean things. That penetrates and breaks and damages cells. This coconut cream, fine. It didn't damage the body, even if it was mixed with lye. Now you've got everything's chemical. Nothing's clean. And if you take the coconut cream, if it's sour, you use that as soap. Mix it with a little water and it'll lather up, and there's your soap. Good soap. Yeah, animal fat. Pardon?
By itself.
By itself. Yeah, but it kind of gets stinky. Coconut cream isn't as stinky. That's really stinky. That starts going, yeah. Well, I don't let them. I want the clients to get some fiber, So I tell them not to filter it. So if you want some very thin,
No, you're not doing it, it's actually solid. What we get is solid.
well, yeah, we'll see. And when that other company used to do it, they would filter out all of the
I don't filter mine.
the fibers.
It's like that.
Pardon?
When I make my own, it's like that. Here's my tip. When I make my own coconut cream,
Yeah.
my own juices, it's like what it used to be that we used to get. It's not nearly as thick.
Oh, mine always was.
And I don't add water like you do. I don't drip any water into it.
Yeah,
And mine is soft.
that's funny. Mine's always hard. Even if I make mine with my a Green Star Gold,
Yep.
yeah, I get mine solid as solid can be.
No, this is soft too, like
Yeah.
that's it also.
Were you using the Green Star Gold or Green Star 1000? Oh, see, I have Green Star Gold. It's a larger hole. The Green Star 1000 is a smaller hole. So I get more pulp into mine when I juice mine. So you're just not getting as much pulp. Like I say, they're getting more pulp. Yeah.
More fiber.
Yes. So that's making it thicker. Okay. Do you have a question? This gentleman. Well, Candida is a yeast that feeds on sugar-damaged tissue. So you don't want to get rid of it. You just want to make sure it doesn't cause you problems. And as long as you're thin, you're going to have problems. Because the verotoxins that it produces are drying, cause itching, and cause the acidity that damages surrounding tissue when those fluids hit it. So if you have excess fat, you have enough fat to protect all of the tissues. But as long as you're thin, you're going to have a problem with Candida. And nobody can get rid of Candida. Yeah. You have to live with it, but you want to live happily with it. That means get fat. Pardon? No, that's a different mold, but they have similar itching, And to keep it from itching so much on the skin, you can put a lot of put coconut cream on your skin. If it's itching internally, drinking coconut cream helps alleviate. Usually people don't get Candida in the face. Candida doesn't do well in the brain, so when it discards through the skin, it's usually heavy metals that are causing the problem, and it's not a mold. It's not Candida. Candida exists usually from, the jaw down, and it will hit the joints more frequently, and other areas where there's a lot of moisture, like in the crotch, in the toes and things like that. Yeah. Okay. Do you have a question, Joe?
Yeah. On the Nicola website, there was an article about calling blood pressure. And it said if you had blood pressure at 120 or less, it's way more susceptible to heart problems.
Isn't that what I've been saying for years?
That's what you're saying?
Yeah. I said high blood pressure is very important for people who have congested arteries and heart failure. They need a higher blood pressure, a systolic pressure, to make sure that those open. And when they don't, and those tests came out of 45,000 people, and this was done in England.